Okay, take two, because right as I started recording just a moment ago, a bunch of stuff fell over in my room and distracted me. So, welcome to Mr. K is Wrong, where I debunk Facebook posts from somebody that I used to know who is named Mr. K. Obviously, as a full name aside from that, but I keep him anonymous because I am debunking his bull crap. And in this case, you look at the episode title and you know what it is. No, Bill Clinton didn't kill the due process for immigrants. And I do want to say I was going to record an episode last week, but I was visiting with my family during the holiday season, during Halloween. We watched scary movies, and we even watched The Substance, which has plenty of nudity in it, which made it a little bit awkward, But anyway, I had a good time. We ate food and watched movies, and I'm feeling like I had to come back to record an episode of this because it's been a while. So I'm going to debunk a right wing post that Mr. K made on Facebook. It says, "Hey, Democrats, here is your due process signed into law by Slick Willie. Signed into law by President Bill Clinton on September 30, 1996. The 1996 Illegal Immigrant Reform and Responsibility Act, IIRIRA, allows deportation without a judicial hearing through a process called expedited removal." End quote. So it sounds like, quite a slam dunk sort of post, right? It seems like even a critic like myself might be, I guess, painted into a corner, and maybe I wouldn't know how to get out of this one. But here's a little fact check, though. Yes, the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 96 was signed by President Bill Clinton, but this post completely misrepresents what it does and why. Also, it kind of overlooks the fact that, people who are critical of our immigration system have criticized Bill Clinton and other Democratic presidents just as they would criticize Republicans. So it's already not necessarily a huge slam dunk. All it's doing is noting that there are too many similarities between the two parties. It's not quite the own that the person who posted this thinks it is. It just demonstrates that both parties can appear to be anti immigrant to some extent. So, expedited removal doesn't apply to everyone, it only applies to certain non citizens caught very soon after entering the country illegally and near the border. It was meant to quickly process people who had no valid claim to enter the U.S., not to deport long term residents, asylum seekers, or anyone with a valid visa or legal status. There is due process. People subject to expedited removal can request asylum if they fear persecution. If they do, they get an interview with an asylum officer, and, if necessary, a hearing before an immigration judge. The sorts of things that Trump doesn't like, that MAGA doesn't like. They want to just be able to instantly get rid of anybody that they disapprove of. But the hearing process, due process, that's literally built into the law. It's not a lawless deportation without due process, although that's what the meme makes it seem like. So both parties have expanded and enforced it. Every president since Clinton, including George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, has used or modified the policy. It's a bipartisan issue about border enforcement, not a partisan Democrat policy. And notice they always take the word Democratic and just shorten it to Democrat. I guess they think it's cute to make it sound like the word rat or something like that. I don't know. It's just some petty stuff that they always sneak into these things. It'd be like it'd be like me always calling Republicans repugnantkins or something like that. It can be fun. Like I understand the idea, but it's also childish and stupid. A little bit, and it ultimately distracts from the fact that the Republicans are actually clearly the worst of the two parties, even though, yes, I do have my critiques of the Democratic Party, and yes, there have been Democrats who I think should face criminal charges, including Joe Biden should face charges for being complicit in the genocide in Gaza and stuff like that. And, going back to this theme in this particular meme, I think Bill Clinton, even though I don't think it was a crime, he should face scrutiny for still feeding into the anti immigrant hysteria that, this country loves so well. So many of these establishment Democrats have been, afraid to dip their toe into the water of actual general amnesty or something like that, which actually would not be a threat to this country because guess what? General amnesty means just that. You can still go after people if they have committed violent crimes, like if there's a proverbial Ted Bundy type or a terrorist or any number of those things. If a person has evidence, if there's evidence that they've committed a crime, well, then you can still go after them. But if there's no such crimes or no evidence of such crimes, well, then the person should be able to have an expedited citizenship process, at least in my opinion, because citizenship of various people across the world is actually not an inherently threatening idea. It's not inherently dangerous. It's good for the economy. And no, I don't just mean as cheap, exploitable labor, but I just mean, it enriches our society to have diverse cultural and even linguistic elements. You've got diversity of restaurants, for example, that you can go to. You have diversity of opinion, of course. And it's also a potentially moderating influence to have different cultures side by side. If like they experience different points of view from different cultures, they might sort of moderate their own culture and realize, oh, maybe we're actually wrong about that aspect of you know our worldview, and maybe this is something that could be changed. That's like and that goes both ways. That could involve American citizens who were previously long here, recognizing that, oh, this culture isn't as bad as I originally thought, so I'm going to modify my views of this person. And even when it comes to some racist types, they might say, like if they meet somebody that they actually have to grudgingly admit that they like, they might at least admit, oh, that's one of the good ones. You know, like I'll even use my dad as an example, that because I wouldn't say my dad was like an extremely racist person, but he was at least a little bit. But my dad really liked this guy that my aunt Donna went out with named Tarek, and you know, years after they broke up, my dad would still bring Tarek up pretty randomly. And it was this guy from Kuwait, obviously not a white guy. He probably had a different religion and all that kind of stuff. But man, my dad sure liked that guy. So a little bit of multiculturalism and experiencing people from different walks of life, it can go a long way into sort of at least grudgingly make people admit that there actually are some good people from this country or this religion or whatever. And in fact, When I experience religious people, it modifies me as an atheist. I'm less likely to say that all religious people are extreme, as another example. And if some religious people get along with me, they might be reminded, oh yeah, that atheist that I know isn't actually that bad. It's the same premise pretty much across the board. You know, if you meet people and have good experiences with them, you're a little less likely to smear that entire group who has whatever sort of characteristic that that person might embody in some way. So the fear mongering about immigrants, it's getting old. I've been sick of it for a long, long time. And I'm sick of posts like this. I'm sick of the anti-immigrant panic, the hysteria, the idea that they're all terrorists or gangsters or eating the cats and dogs or whatever kind of bull crap. It just gets really old. And the post tone is political, not factual. Going back to the meme that Mr. K had shared, calling people democrats and twisting complex immigration law into a meme doesn't change the reality. Immigration policy is complicated, and this law is one of many efforts by both parties to manage the border. So, yes, Clinton signed that into law, but no, it doesn't eliminate due process, and no, it's not proof that Democrats or Democrats don't care about fairness. It's proof that immigration policy has always involved trade offs, enforcement, and bipartisan responsibility. So that about wraps it up for this episode. I hope you enjoyed and understood what I had to say. And yeah, Mr. K keeps on going off the rails with post after post after post. So, yeah, have a good one.